Welcome to Gray Matters. I'm Lee Coyne, your host here on this CCTV network, and we have with us Carla Mickelson? Michelson, M-I-K?
Two K's, E-L-S-O-N.
Okay.
I will answer to Mickelson, though. It's fine.
Okay. Michelson. And Carla is one of the rare entities that was born here in good old Salem. We won't tell you how many years ago, because you don't want her turning Santa Claus red. But she grew up in a farm, so tell us what life was like on the farm when you were a little girl. What did you raise on the farm?
Well, mostly we had a dairy,
Mm-hmm.
so we were always dealing with animals.
What kind?
Well, we had Jersey cows. Jerseys have more butter fat in the milk, so we would sell it. We sold to Fred Meyer, and at that time they were small. There were only a few stores, and they had all Jersey milk.
Wow.
And so that's where we sold, and they made butter and cheese also. And they liked Jersey milk because it was very rich, and you didn't need as much of it to make butter and cheese.
The cheese was not used for pizzas in those days, right? As far as
No,
you know.
I don't remember when pizza came.
Yeah.
It certainly didn't come
era.
for quite a while.
That was when the economy went flat like a pizza. Anyway, okay.
And we did have pigs. We did.
Did you know, by the way, that mother pigs hate the smell of human sweat on the piglets, and if a piglet is touched by a human being without gloves, they will abandon the baby because they think that we smell worse than a pig. It's reverse psychology, really.
Well, maybe they have a point.
I don't know. And here you
I think
we
that's
were
why we survived as a species. Predators wouldn't want to come near us because of the smell.
Good. Okay. So now you went to school here in the Salem area. Which high school?
Well,
did you
I
go?
actually went to Woodburn.
Woodburn?
I went to Woodburn High School.
Yeah.
It's now the middle school. So when you drive into Woodburn, the first school that you see is French Prairie Middle School, and that used to be the high school.
Carla, were you active in school politics either then or later on?
Yeah.
What happened?
I was, what did we call that? Reg Room representative. So that meant that I was on student council.
Good. What were the big issues of that day?
Believe it or not, whether girls could wear pants to school.
Should girls wear pants to school? This was taking a survey. Call in. We're the substitute for American Idol. Call in, or you're texting your vote. Should girls wear pants or not? Are we astute enough? By the way, February 15th is the day of Susan B. Anthony's birthday, so all you women celebrate, because Oregon became a state that allowed women the right to vote ahead of the national 19th Amendment. Did you know that?
Yes. I think Oregon was 1912.
Yes, and Abigail Duniway, Scott Duniway,
Yeah.
she led the crusade. And did you know that Susan B. Anthony actually spoke at the Reed Opera House in 1871?
No, I did not know
Yes,
that.
we celebrated that last year. Maybe this year again we'll have a celebration with the League of Women Voters and all.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
We had our friend Michael Davis of the Statesman Journal, the exec editor. He read some excerpts from the article that announced her fire and brimstone speech. You had to get
I bet she did.
You had to get the males to vote for you because women couldn't vote for themselves in that election. So, and Ozzie Good, we're going to have a special show on him with Allison Kelly later on. But so tell us, I'll mention just peripherally, my own involvement in college politics was being elected to an unusual position called Chairman of Student Opinion. I don't know if any of the student council has. This is Fairleigh Dickinson University in New Jersey, which we used to call New Jersey, the New York accent. And they used to have a student suggestion box and petitions and stuff, and people would put their suggestions in. One of the suggestions was, should we open up the library on Sundays, because the churches had been insisting that Sunday should be a day to worship the Lord all day, and that studying for your tests and doing homework on Sunday was irreligious or something like that. That was the thinking of the more conservative elements of that day and age. And we won. We finally got the library open for 4 hours from 1 to 5 after traditional church service hours. And that was my first victory as a student council member back in, I think it was probably around 1962, 63, roughly.
Oh, okay. Well, I went to Willamette here in Salem.
Mm-hmm.
And
Studying what
well, American Studies. I really didn't know what I wanted to major in,
Mm-hmm.
and when I got to my junior year, I looked and I only needed 2 more classes for that major.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured that must have been the major I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
even though I didn't know that for sure,
Now you know.
because I certainly took all the classes for it. It's they call it an interdisciplinary degree because the main focus of it is America, so it's American history, American politics, American economics.
Right.
You know, and at Willamette, you certainly had to take world history and all those things in addition. But it was fun. I enjoyed.
Did you have a favorite teacher, professor at Willamette who inspired you? Or favorite class?
Well, the one who I think had the most impact and has turned out to be one of my favorites later in life than at the time
Who would be that?
was Professor Kent Smith. He was a political science professor,
Mm-hmm.
and he taught constitutional law.
Uh-huh.
And I remember being the only woman in his class, in that class for the second semester. And so every time the class met, he would ask me, well, Carla, let's hear the woman's point of view, which meant that I always had to be called on in class, and which the men did not.
Was that demeaning or was that liberating?
A little of both, but it did force me to think through my opinions and to be able to argue them logically.
Uh-huh.
And so in that sense, I
liberated.
I did. And there were some guys in there who were giving me some crap, and I do remember one time in class being able to get back at them.
Counter zap.
I won't go through, it's a long story, but I did. I got mine back.
Good for you.
So, and Professor Smith thought it was very funny. So, but he was, he was very rigorous, and you really had to know what you were doing, and I appreciate that. I was scared to death most of the time I went into class, but as an adult, I realized that it was good for me to think it through, and it makes it easier to tell people when they ask your opinion. No, I need more information. There's not enough there for me to have an opinion, and that has certainly been a great thing to have.
Now you graduated with American Studies at Willamette University, and what was the next stepping stone of your career? Where'd you go from there?
Well, I had a series of jobs, but I wound up for quite a while at Portland State. I worked for, it was then the School of Urban and Public Affairs. My boss was Dr. Noha Toulan, who was Egyptian, and another scary sort of person until you get to know them. And he was really wonderful, and I felt like I got an entire college education just working for him. And he would certainly talk about, he was also an American citizen as well as an Egyptian citizen. And so he had very strong opinions about the United States. And
did he flow like the Nile?
There's not a lot of oil in Egypt.
No, did he flow like the Nile?
But the Nile, yes.
Was he in a state of denial?
No, he was quite. I do remember him showing us pictures of Cairo, and I knew that his family was important in Egypt. But when he showed the picture of this mosque, and he said, "This is the Imran Toulan Mosque, built by my ancestor who ruled Egypt in the 9th century."
Wow.
And then I realized, oh, you're trying not to be too impressed, like, oh my God, but he judged people totally on their character. He didn't care if you were rich or poor. It was what kind of human being you were.
That's it.
and
Solid stance.
he had a real influence on how I thought about things internationally.
So let's thank his spirit
So-
there.
I didn't hear what you just said. I'm sorry.
Let's thank his spirit is still being alive in your heart and soul.
Oh, yes. Yes, and his wife was Argentinian, and she was a
Poetic
very accomplished architect in her own right, and she was an amazing woman. And and because I was interested in politics, they really helped me about international politics. And Dr. Toulon said the one thing about the United States that really stuck with me, because he'd been all over the world. And he said that there are countries that are more socially integrated than the United States, and the people mingle and this and that. But if you look at the power structure of those countries, they don't let people of color in. They're all like Brazil and Argentina.
Stratified.
The people who are
It's like
in
a Berlin
power,
Wall between classes.
Yeah, and only the European people have the power. And he said the United States is trying. He said we're kind of stumble forward, but we're really trying to bring everybody into that power structure, and that we deserved a lot of credit for trying that. And he certainly used.
Okay. Carla, let me ask an earlier question, because it's let it fall into place. How did the political bug bite you? How did you first get interested? Did you read newspapers, watch television? What was your point of immersion or inception, whatever you want to call it?
Well, I do remember my parents having me watch the political conventions, because they were always they were just starting to televise them. So
1960.
1960 was my first one with Kennedy.
In case you've forgotten, that was Kennedy versus Nixon. Eisenhower was just leaving the presidency after 2 terms, heart attack in the middle. Nixon was his vice president, aspiring to succeed him, and Kennedy was a rather new young senator. He would have been one of the youngest candidates ever to run for president. He would have been the first Catholic president, so he had that handicap to overcome. And he ran against, I guess, Adlai Stevenson and Kefauver and some of the old line establishment candidates. I'm an old journalist, so I kind of store up that data up there. And is that sort of like the playing field?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I do remember Adlai Stevenson at the Democratic Convention speaking. I can't remember exactly what he said, though. It was a little while back. So
He was from Illinois,
yes,
Libertyville, and he was considered somewhat of an idealist and a liberal. Nixon was much more conservative, although under Eisenhower, who considered himself a moderate Republican, probably more moderate than a lot of the people running for the nomination today for president. No names mentioned.
I'm not sure that his party would accept him today.
Maybe not.
I think he could still be a Republican, but I don't think they would put him in a position of leadership.
Yeah, with the Taft people, by the way, represented the Republican conservative wing in that day and age. Taft being from Ohio.
I also, when I was in high school, Norma Paulus was running for the legislature, and
She later became Secretary of State, as I recall.
and she was a Republican candidate for governor. And she was very encouraging to all of us in high school.
What was she like? What was her personality like?
Oh, I really enjoyed her because her opponent at the time was trying to paint her as Republican wealth. And this was a woman who came from Eastern Oregon. She didn't go to college, but she worked for a Supreme Court justice who got her into law school under an exception. So she worked her way up, and I think she got a little annoyed that she was being portrayed as this establishment wealthy Republican.
Stereotype.
So but she was very, very outgoing, very, very warm for all of us high school kids, encouraging, stay in school, and especially to young women. She was very definitely saying, don't accept second best. You can do these things, and I enjoyed meeting her, and especially also her husband. I got to know him later in my other life when I worked for legal aid. No, he was an attorney, and he represented school districts, and he was just a delightful person.
And now we have a woman governor also.
Yes.
A person of, I bet you didn't know that Kate Brown was one of my early guests on CCTV, on KMUZ when I was doing radio before I graduated to television. Still have some friends over in that studio, and she was a very lively guest. And by the way, we did talk, and this will be interesting for our audience. Did you know that in the state of Oregon, there is no law on the books that govern dementia and the degree of mental illness and incompetence you could have before you lose the right to vote?
No, I didn't.
So that, and I brought this out because many, many years ago I worked in a DC nursing home, and what they did, obviously illegal and unethical, is they got the demented people to sign their name at the bottom of the ballot, and they filled in their own choices to essentially stuff the ballot box. And this could happen in Oregon too. So the next time you contact your lawmaker, legislator, whether it's people on the Peter Courtney side or on the Republican side, whatever side you're on, let your lawmaker know. Kim Thatcher would be a good person to touch. She's state senator. You have Peter Courtney on the Democratic side. I'm trying to be equal opportunity here. And let them know that you would like to have some hearings, maybe in the next legislative session in 2017, to establish rules for how far a person could be demented before their right to vote is taken away, because they could be exploited by relatives who get them to sign the bottom and then fill it in if they're living at home. Or people in nursing homes, assisted living homes, they could play the same game, and that your vote and my vote gets sort of wiped out in the process. Just something to bear in mind. You could bring that up in one of your future forums. Tell us how you got into the demo forum business. So what's that all about?
Oh, well, I think that actually came about because I was in Salem City Club.
Yes.
And I was asked to be on the board. I think they asked new, younger, and I was considered a younger member then.
Spring chicken.
They ask you to be on the board, so I said yes, I'd love to be on your board. And I met Brian Clem, who is now in the legislature. He talked me into being his vice president when he was president, and they called it then vice president. It was called president-elect. But then he decided to run for the legislature.
Right.
And he comes to me and he says, guess what? I'm running for the legislature. I have to resign.
Yeah. He won the old seat of Billy Dalto.
Yes, that was his first race. And so because I thought Brian really belonged in the legislature, I swallowed hard.
I've met him once. And I met his wife, Carol Suzuki.
Oh, they have a great family.
Yeah.
And so I did it.
I'd like to get them both. There's not enough time to get them to share their Valentine's story. Maybe next year I can, but I'd like to get them both on. It should be interesting.
Yeah.
And fascinating. Okay. So tell us, what is the demo forum? Some of us have seen it. We're not endorsing a political party, but we're just sharing what's available on TV.
Well, demo forums, they're definitely for Democrats, because a lot of times you have Democratic candidates come and they want to meet local Democrats in order to further their campaign goals, and it's a great place to meet voters. We do try in non-election years to have informational programs.
Issues.
Like healthcare, education, higher education, and how when you're trying to lead from kindergarten through college, and which is not always easy to do. I'm trying to think of some other. We sometimes, well, City Club also has more local issues. So we try to support each other in terms of.
Who runs the City Club forums these days?
City Club always has a program committee, and it's any member of City Club can join it.
It's the Willamette Heritage Center.
Yes, that's where the luncheons are. They're usually in the spinning room
on Fridays.
On the third floor. I'm not sure which way they're going this year. It's every other Friday, so it's either like the second and the fourth, or the first and the third.
Check their website.
Yes, yeah, it's www.salemcityclub.com.
Okay. Does Demo Forum have a website too?
Yes, they do, and I'm sorry I don't have it committed to memory.
But
the Marion County Democrats do.
Okay, yeah.
And you can find out when we have them.
For the sake of being nonpartisan, I do want to say that Republicans, Independents, and other parties, even the Pacific Green Party, can attend these meetings. And there's a lot to learn, even if you're in part of that political opposition, because you have to know where the other side stands. So don't think that by attending a forum, a demo forum, that you proclaim that you are allied for life as a Democrat. You're there for informational and educational purposes. So I think
yes,
you have to broaden the scope on this.
And people have to remember that Democrats don't always agree with each other. So if you come to a demo forum and you're in disagreement, you're probably not going to be by yourself.
It's called Family Feud.
And it does happen. It does happen sometimes. And
otherwise, you wouldn't have primaries.
Correct. And we clearly now have some real interesting primaries. And it depends. I mean, Oregon's always comes fairly late.
What are some of the seats that are being contended in the legislature the last you've heard? Or some of the hot spots?
Well, Brian Clem is running for re-election. I don't know his opponent. They usually try to have one. Oregon does better than most places, but there are still quite a few districts that are up for.
Usually somebody who is in their first term is considered fair game to try to challenge them and, quote, knock them off, unquote. Hope that's not being uncharitable. And
well, no.
Okay. Who are the first termers who may face vigorous opposition in the legislature?
In this area,
I think
it's District 22.
Bill Post, I think, is a new legislator.
Yeah, but that district is almost, if you're a Democrat, you would consider it prohibitively Republican. It would be very difficult to run there.
There's a fellow named Vic Gilliam from Silverton.
Now, District 18, I don't know who's running there, but it's the incumbent isn't running again.
Vic Gilliam's not running.
Right, he's not running.
So that's an open seat.
So that's an open seat.
Keep your eye on that.
District 22 is an open seat. Betty Comp has retired.
Oh, she has? Okay. She's a former school teacher and
in Woodburn.
Principal.
Yeah, she was the principal at French Prairie Middle School in Woodburn.
So who do you think was running there?
There is a gentleman named Matt Geiger. He ran against Betty last time as a Republican, but he's running this time as an independent.
Interesting.
I can't remember the young gentleman's name. I actually met him. The Republican candidate has signed on. There may be more. I don't know because the deadline isn't until March.
And on the other side, who's running?
Teresa Alonso Leon. She is a city councilor from Woodburn, and she works in the state in the education department.
Interesting. Okay. Now, is there a website? I guess you have to wait for the League of Women Voters booklet to come out to find out about them and all. I'm going to ask a question that is going to sound maybe a little over the top, but I'll take. Sometimes politicians have the tendency, their reputation of exaggerating, if not telling outward Pinocchio-type lies when they run for office so they could garner some votes of people who are in this swing category. Has there ever been a challenge legally in court of somebody telling a lie and having to face up to a court challenge on that they're giving false information to the voters?
As far as I know, no.
Is there any law that considers it almost like tantamount to perjury or not? Just food.
That would have been a good question.
Food for thought.
For Kate Brown,
Okay.
because she, as the Secretary
Yeah.
of State, is the
Yeah. Okay,
the
think
one
about
who
that.
enforces those election
Okay.
rules.
If I were, and this is partly in jest, but partly, if I were running a television show between opposition candidates, Republicans, Democrats, and otherwise, I would use a split screen. I would have both candidates attached to a polygraph and have the needle on the other part of the split screen say, "Who gets the Pinocchio prize?" The most lies conveyed. A new reality show.
Well, I'm not sure you'd get too many people to come in.
Well, but they would run away.
It's interesting though that you say that.
Yes.
Because I think there are a lot of voters who pay a lot of attention to the political things, and there are other people who, it's an election, and they don't. But I think
apathy anonymous.
But I think that even the people who aren't as attuned to things can kind of tell when they're getting a snow job. Mm. And I think that's why we're having such an interesting election season now. Is there are very qualified candidates running, but you feel like they never tell you anything that's honest.
Okay. The other thing I want to bring up is that some candidates imply or say outright that they'll deliver something that's not within the realm of their office. It's beyond what they can produce. For instance, if you're running for a legislature and saying, if I'm elected, I will get rid of all the taxes in such and such a category, or I'll reduce the gasoline tax. One legislator cannot do it alone. They have to garner the votes of everybody else, or a majority there. So to say that you're going to do it is really a blatant lie. You can't. You got to get other people on your bandwagon, and I think it's time for the voters out there to realize that, and the question and answers challenge them. And if they don't let you ask the question in the Q&A session, stand up and say something.
Well, your vote is the most important thing you have regarding how you're governed. And I would, my feeling is don't get bought and don't be cheap.
Okay. We're about to go off, so I want to say you happy election day. Enjoy yourself. You have to look at the clock.
Yes, I know. I was trying to.